What should the Mariners do with Colton Wong? Could they trade Logan Gilbert this summer? And should Scott Service utilize his bench more? All that and more coming up here on Mailbag Monday. Colby, hit it.
You are Locked On Mariners, your daily Seattle Mariners podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Ahoy, sailors. It is Monday, June 19th, 2023. Happy Juneteenth, everyone. This is Heading Gonzalez and Colby Patnode for the Locked On Mariners podcast. Thank you so much for making us your first listen. Subscribe, like, and turn on alerts if you're watching on YouTube, or subscribe and leave a 5-star review on your preferred podcast platform if you like what you hear. And if you're part of the crew and rock with us every single day, let us know in the comments below. And if you want to hear from us even more, please consider signing up for our Patreon. You can now get a free 7-day trial to check out the show. The link, as well as our social accounts, is in the description of this episode. It is Mailbag Monday, the show where we answer your Mariners questions. And we got a couple of questions from our email, lockedonmariners@gmail.com. That's right. You can ask us questions via there as well, especially if you only listen to the show on Spotify or wherever. So we're going to get into those. We're going to start with an email question. We got another one that's coming a little later on. But let's start with Dwight here. Who asks, currently sitting at 35-35, the M's only need to play at a full season 97-win pace the rest of the year in order to finish with 90 wins. With the offense heating up, Wu and Miller back on track, and deadline moves yet to be made, what reason is there not to think the M's are going to win 90-plus for a third straight year? So you said it right there. You mentioned it, the deadline. That's what's going to determine all of this, really, because the Mariners undeniably have holes. Even if they go on a run here, they have holes that they need to address, specifically on the offensive side of things. But as we said yesterday, if they're going to get on a run, they need to do it now, because how they perform over the next 3 to 4 weeks is going to determine how aggressive or not the Mariners get at the trade deadline, how aggressive they get to fill their needs. They need to be incentivized. Justin Hollander, Jerry DiPoto, company, they have to be incentivized to get aggressive at the deadline. And the only way to do that is by winning some games and saying, hey, the wild card is feasible, and maybe the division is still feasible as well. So again, you got to get on a run here. You've won 5 of your last 8. You got a very, very important road trip coming up here. If you can somehow just make it out of this 500, or somehow win, 4 of 6, to be on a pretty good track to get on a little bit of a heater here going into the All-Star break, because you got the Nationals coming up, you got the Rays coming up, who are still the best team in baseball, but haven't been playing as well as of late. You got the Astros, who are really struggling right now without Yordan Alvarez, and you got a Giants team that's winning but is really banged up as well. So you can bank some wins here, but again, this all falls on the shoulders of the Mariners. They have to execute. But this is crunch time now. We are at the point now where it is crunch time, and every single game from here until the end of July will truly determine how the rest of their season will go. So, can they do it? Yes, they absolutely can. But they got a lot of work ahead of them.
Right, and every day that they don't get on this 97-win pace is one more day that the pace has to be even better. And the 97-win pace is not easy, even for 97-win teams. That's why there's usually only one team that wins 100 games every year, maybe 2. So yeah, it's not that they only have to be on a 97-win pace to get to 90. That's doing, like, that's a sustained run over, what is, I think, 92 games left. You gotta pedal to the metal here. You got to be 18 games over 500 the rest of the way out to get to 90. And that starts by winning these games and putting yourself in a position where maybe it's not necessarily going out and getting Luis Castillo at the deadline, but you need to be in a position where a deal like that makes sense to this club, because if you're just hovering around 500, it doesn't matter how nicely the August schedule lays out for you, and it does. If you can't get to a point where you can make hay in August because your July is, and the rest of June and July is so mediocre that the club decides not to buy, or not to buy aggressively, it's not going to make a difference. So, yeah, I think I think it's definitely possible they can get to 97. Or to get to 90 wins. I wouldn't be shocked. But it's got to start now, because you're running out of time. Eventually, you're going to get to a point where you're going to need the ridiculously long win streak to get to 90. And that's just not something you can count on. Right now, you're still at a point where if you win 7 out of 10 a couple times throughout this year, and then you go, 6 out of 4 or 6 out of 10 a couple times, then you're going to probably get to 90 if you're just 500 the rest of the way. But if you're going into July 28th and you're still, I don't know how many games that would be at that point. If you're 50-50 on July 28th or whatever, now you're talking about needing to go on a 110 win pace to get to 90 wins. So yeah, they could still do it. They certainly can, but they got to start like now. And they had to start like last week, and they did. They went 4-2, which is good. Now they have a tough road trip, and they got to find a way to at least hold their ground on this tough road trip before they get back home to face a pretty bad Nationals team. But the time is now. You have to start this now, and that doesn't mean that every loss is an indictment on their ability to do it, but every loss is obviously one fewer opportunity to get to 90. And I think you're going to have to get to 90 to even think about the playoffs. So they got to start getting to work right now.
Yeah, it makes the pace that much greater if with every loss, and it also potentially inhibits your ability to go out and get better, or to justify going out and getting aggressive to get better.
Yeah.
So next question here. Again, we're gonna do our other email question a little bit later on in the show. Let's switch things up here and go to Twitter and check in with Mark, who asks, since Woo and Miller are going well, would you consider trading Logan Gilbert for the right controllable bat? The answer is no. Depending, because like Woo, you mentioned him here, he's on a pitch count, he's going to get shut down at some point. We know that for a fact. Depending on the health of Marco Gonzalez, if I'm also trading Logan Gilbert, I potentially have to address 2 holes in the rotation, and that also makes Bryce Miller all the more likely to start a playoff game for me, if that's actually something that factors in, which I don't know if that factors in without Logan Gilbert in the mix.
No, there's no bat that you're going to go get in the middle of this year that is going to justify trading Logan Gilbert. And, there's a couple reasons why. Gilbert's better than his last few outings. And, maybe Mark's not consciously doing this, but I think there is some concern over Gilbert's last couple of outings that, he might not be that good, maybe we should trade him. That's not how that works, right? Really good pitchers can have a bad 3-week stretch. Luis Castillo had a bad 4 or 5 start stretch. I didn't hear anybody trying to trade him. So, whether that's what Mark's doing or not, I don't know. But I do know there are people out there who are thinking like that. And it just doesn't make sense. By the way, you realize Woo is only 2 innings away from setting a new career high. That's it, just 2. So this idea that, well, you have Woo who can get through the rest of this year. No, he cannot. Woo's probably got another 50 innings in him, which conservatively is 8 to 10 starts at most, which gets you to August if you're lucky. That's not going to work. Now you have to go out and you have to get another pitcher, and we know how expensive pitching is. And again, for the right controllable bat does not exist on this trade market. It's not going to happen, because like, even if you think like hypothetically, let's say it's Jonathan India, right? No, you didn't get better. That's a net neutral at best. And you probably got worse because, like you said, you don't have the pitching depth to back up trading Logan Gilbert right now. And that guy is not Emerson Hancock. All right. Logan Gilbert is steak. Emerson Hancock is bologna. Like, they're both meat, but one of them is legitimately good, and the other one is just kind of filler. It's just kind of there. And that's what Emerson Hancock is right now. You cannot rely on Emerson Hancock to be anything this year or next year for that matter. So you can't build around the idea that Hancock might be good. It's not feasible. So no, I'm not trading Logan Gilbert. I'm not trading George Kirby. I'm not trading Bryce Miller. I might trade Bryan Woo, but even that, probably not. So no, it's not a good idea to trade Gilbert, because you're not getting Ronald Acuna, right? You're not getting a star. You're not getting Ozzie Albies for Gilbert. Would you even want to trade Gilbert for Ozzie Albies?
No,
probably not.
Yeah, like Luis Robert was a name that came to mind. That's not gonna happen.
No.
Look, if Robbie Ray was healthy and good, I could maybe wrap my head around this a little easier, but
That's still
even
an
then,
off-season trade.
even then, there's a lot of reliance on Bryce Miller, a lot of reliance on Marco Gonzalez or whoever you get for that 5th spot, whether that's Emerson Hancock or some trade out there, whatever. There's a lot of variables here where maybe it makes sense on paper, but that's too convoluted for us to hammer out right now.
No.
And frankly, it's not realistic. That's not happening. It's not
Plus,
happening. So
if you wanted to trade Logan Gilbert for 3 years of a 60 grade bat, wouldn't it make more sense to just go get a 55 grade bat who's a rental and only give up Jonathan Clase and then go out and get that 60 grade bat this winter? You know what I mean? Like, it's just not the best allocation of resources.
Yeah, this wasn't the only question asking about trading Gilbert, by the way.
The answer is no.
And I do really feel you touched upon this. I do really feel like this is kind of a pressing the panic button on his last couple of starts. I know they haven't been particularly good, but Gilbert overall this year has shown some things. He's taken the next step. We've talked about this on the show. We talked about this, I don't know, a week or two ago, that he has taken that next step in several different ways. And I'm not sure if I just want to, ball that up and throw it in the trash, which you're not necessarily doing here, because like the idea at face value is trading, him for like a legitimate good bat. I just don't think that guy exists right now.
Yeah. At the end of the day,
I just don't know if you disregard that or discard that because of 2 bad starts recently.
At the end of the day, Logan Gilbert is worth more than the Logan Gilbert equivalent, because good starting pitching is significantly harder to find.
Yeah.
And it's significantly more expensive to buy.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a very good point. All right. So we got a few more questions here coming up in just a moment. But first, a reminder, this episode of the Locked On Mariners podcast is brought to you by eBay Motors. For a championship team, it's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head on over to eBay Motors. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure every part you need fits right the first time around. Just add your ride to My Garage and look for the green check to know the part will fit or your money back. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. And you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Thank you again for making us your first listen here on Mailbag Monday. Mariners and Yankees start tomorrow. Yankee Stadium. You can catch all the action on the Mariners hometown broadcast with SiriusXM via the SXM app. Let's get back into these questions here. Got Darren McCacken, enjoyer. Gee, I wonder what he's going to end this question with. How does one trade bullpen arms? What makes a team like the M's trade someone like a Justin Topa versus someone like, I don't know, a Paul Sewald? Does team control have anything to do with it? Or what makes a team more comfortable trading bullpen arms? Also, we love Darren McCacken. And as always, no, you love Darren McCacken. Now, all right. To answer the question, I mean, there's a lot of factors, right? It depends on where you are, where you want to be next year. Depends on, club control, like you mentioned, of course. Like this year, for example, the Mariners are probably more likely to trade someone like Trevor Gott, who has a year left, as opposed to Paul Sewald. It also depends on the value of those guys. Can you get a ridiculous Aroldis Chapman type offer for Paul Sewald? Like, can you get Gleyber Torres, like that equivalent for Paul Sewald? If so, then yeah, you definitely consider that. But if not, and if you're planning on contending next year, you need good bullpen arms. If you think Paul Sewald helps you next year more than whatever you're getting offered, then you stick with Paul Sewald. So
yeah, we'll say this: club control matters less for relievers than any other position in trade talks, and it's not remotely close. Because, yeah, it's nice if Paul Sewald has, an extra year of club control. That's certainly a bonus. But ultimately, if Sewald was only a rental, okay, I'll either re-sign him this winter, or I'll just go get another guy out of free agency. There's a ton of relievers that are always available every free agency. So I'll just go get a guy to replace him, right? So club control, by a lot of times these relievers, they don't even see their full 6 years. They get non-tendered after year 4 or 5 because they start to get expensive. So club control when it comes to relievers, overrated. It's just, we kind of assume that it's like that because it's the same with starters and bats, but it's just not really true with relievers. But like in terms of like, why would the Mariners trade Topa versus why would they trade Sewald? Which one do they like better? Which one do they think is more sustainable? Which one do they think is going to be better for the longer period of time? Which one do they think they can help the most? That's really what it comes down to. That's when the Mariners look for these bullpen arms in the first place. They try to identify something that they can do to help that pitcher reach their max. For Sewald, it was the fastball. It was throwing the fastball up in the zone. Throw that pitch more. And put it up in the zone instead of down at the knees like the Mets were telling you to do. That's been well documented. They do it with Topa, they do it with Spire, they did it countless other times. Austin Adams, if you want to go way back. So they're good at that. So what the Mariners are looking for if they were to trade a reliever, they're probably looking for the guy that they think they can replace the easiest, that has the skill set that they think is easier. And unless one guy's, getting offered way more than the other guy, then they're probably just going to look and say, okay, well, what skill set do we think we have a better chance of replicating? And that's how they'll make that decision. So yeah, it's just about, you got to trust your analytics people. You got to trust your pitching coaches, and you got to try and figure out which one of these skill sets do we value more? Which player do we think we can help more? And then you consider the cost of, well, what are we getting in return for these players? So it's a little more complicated than just club control.
Yeah. Track record, repeatability, market value, all of these things factor into that discussion. And again, it does really matter where you are and where you think you're going to be next year as well. When you're weighing, how you personally value these players to your ball club as well. So there's a lot of factors. There isn't really one, particular rhyme or reason for it. It's different for every team and every situation.
I mean, you just go back to the famous reliever trade, right? Kendall Graveman, 2 months of Kendall Graveman cost the Astros 4.5 years of Abraham Toro and Joe Smith. Whereas the Mariners were able to go out and get Diego Castillo for prospects and JT Chargois. So it's just kind of depends on the team, and it depends on the pitcher, and it depends on where each team is in the standings. Because if you're thinking about winning the World Series, you're going to pay more for 2 months of Paul Sewald. If Sewald didn't have club control, which he does, you're going to pay more for that guy than you are Topa, just because you just want the better pitcher, period. And Sewald's better than Topa right now. So
next question here comes from Max. What are the Mariners going to do with Colton Wong? Not playing him for like 10 days and then giving him a random spot isn't helping him at all. He's a good player and deserves to try and figure it out somewhere else. Do we trade him or just release him? I'll tell you this, you're definitely not going to find a trade for him. So
unless it's a bad contract for bad contract swap.
Yeah, which doesn't really occur mid-season, but yeah.
No.
Colby, I know you have some thoughts on Colton Wong that you wanted to share.
Yeah, no, it's pretty much that. Nobody's denying that Colton Wong has been a big disappointment this year. There's been some, let's say, revisionist history with a lot of people now stepping up and claiming that they knew Colton Wong was going to be a bum because he's been his entire career, and that's not anywhere near the case. But at the end of the day, Colton Wong has been a very successful major leaguer for about a decade now. He's never had struggles like this whatsoever. And while the Mariners did give him lots of time early, they've pulled the plug on him as of late. And it's basically impossible for Colton to help himself or the ball club if he's going to be on the bench for 2 weeks at a time. You can't show you can't show your current team or teams that are out there who might be interested in you that you've made these adjustments. You can't show them by hitting in the cage every day. You need live at-bats. The Mariners are in a situation where they can't really afford to give Colton Wong live at-bats if they don't feel confident that he can hit. So it is a bad situation for both of them, but at the end of the day, you got to do what's right by the player. And if you're not willing to use Colton Wong more than once every 12 days, you need to DFA him.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to trade him. That's not going to happen. Again, maybe if you could swap him for like Mike Zunino, who just got DFA'd or something like that. That happens on occasion. But at the end of the day, you need to DFA him because you need to give Colton Wong the ability to get regular at bats to show if he can turn this around. And by not playing him, you're not giving other teams the possibility of looking at him. And the Mariners really can't afford to play him. So you're kind of just in this scenario here where the Mariners can't afford to play him. Colton Wong can't afford to sit for 14 days at a time and expect to have any value going into next year. So what's best for both player and team is that you just DFA the guy, wish him luck, and you move on. Keeping him on your roster and refusing to use him is unfair. It's unfair to Colton Wong. He's a 10-year veteran of Major League Baseball who is going to get another shot somewhere. Allow him to take that shot now. There's no reason not to. I know they didn't say, well, you want to make sure Dylan Moore can play. Like, no. I'm just saying no to that. BS. Because if you don't think Colton Wong can play for 2 straight weeks, like you don't think he's good enough to do that, then you just call up Mason McCoy if Dylan Moore needs to go on the IL because you're not going to play Mason McCoy more than once every 2 weeks. You're doing the player a disservice by just keeping him on your roster and rotting him on the bench and never using him. And again, I get why the Mariners are doing that. Colton Wong doesn't deserve at-bats. I totally get that.
Yeah.
So then you DFA him.
Yeah.
He's earned that right to go out and try to find a place where he can play, where he can try and rework something, maybe recoup some value towards the end of the year. He deserves that. So to me, the Mariners have done Colton Wong a huge disservice by just letting him rot on the bench for 2 weeks. Just DFA him. Yeah. DFA him, wash your hands of it, say, well, we wish Colton well. I mean, he's a good dude. He's been a good player his entire career. It just didn't happen for us. But we can't, it's not fair to him to sit on the bench for 2 weeks and expect him to perform when he does play. It's not fair to us to sit here and, basically have a 24-man roster, while everybody else is playing with 26. So we're going to DFA Colton Wong. It's the right thing to do, period. Just do that.
Yep. I tweeted yesterday that it was time to move on because, as you said, you're not doing him any favors. You're not doing yourself any favors. And you really, at this point, can't justify giving him at-bats either.
Yep.
They've already moved on. This is very Tommy La Stella-esque, where it feels long overdue for them to part
They've
ways.
already moved on. They just refuse to make it official. Yeah. And that is unfair to the player.
Yeah. Yeah, they're essentially ghosting him without saying,
yeah,
they're leaving it with you.
Yeah, they're leaving him on red. He's on, he's, he's in limbo right now.
Yeah.
It's not fair.
Yeah, it's an unfortunate situation. Again, look, you mentioned the revisionist history and all this stuff on Colton Wong. Colton Wong in the last 2 years had posted his career best in WRC plus back-to-back years.
He was top 10 second baseman.
And that's after making mechanical changes. There was actual tangible evidence there that something had changed for the better for him offensively. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the defense was a problem, and it's been a problem this year. We thought maybe that, the Mariners could figure that out, or maybe that, was a fluke, essentially. It wasn't, these things happen. That's baseball, unfortunately. Sometimes you acquire guys and for inexplicable reasons, they fall off. Jesse Winker. I thought Jesse Winker was going to be amazing this year in Milwaukee after being a massive disappointment in Seattle this past year. And it's just been more of the same, and I don't really know how that's possible because Jesse Winker, it's like a top 10 hitter in Major League Baseball for like 4 straight years before that. Like, these things just happen. There's no explanation for it, really. And so all you can really say is that, it's a bummer. That's it. All right, you're listening to the Locked On Mariners podcast. Thank you again for making us your first listen here on Mailbag Monday. Again, you can catch the Mariners and the Yankees starting tomorrow on the Mariners hometown broadcast of SiriusXM via the SXM app. We've got another question via email, and oh my, That is tiny on the screen. All right, I got to zoom in. All right, this comes from SMs. Hey guys, I had a ballpark question for you. What are some good spots to loiter around / enjoy the game from inside of T-Mobile Park? My seat at today's game in the 300 section gave me crippling vertigo, and I had to leave the game painfully early as I could not stand the panic attack it was causing me. I always see the ballpark shots on TV of fans milling around gathering areas of the ballpark, but I have no idea where they are or if they're restricted. Thanks. All right, so this is a question solely for Colby to ask, because let's just say the last time I was at T-Mobile Park, it wasn't called T-Mobile Park, and Johan Santana was starting for the Minnesota Twins.
Yeah, let's just say Ty's not a real Mariners fan because he refuses to come visit his home ballpark, even when his best buddy's going to be there. But anyway,
and one of his favorite players growing up is getting inducted into the Team Hall of Fame. Yeah,
2 years in a row. How about that? So yeah, the 300 levels where I like to hang out. So if that's causing you issue, obviously we have to eliminate that. I do wonder how high up you were, because the seats kind of get pretty narrow as you get towards the top. Whereas if you're in the bottom row of the 300 level, it's fine. The places most people hang out, there's Edgar's Cantina. You can go in there. There is the pen, which is in center field. You see a lot of overhead shots. That is in the center field gate. It's a little tricky. You have to go downstairs to the street level to get to the pen, which is where a lot of people hang out and watch the game. Well, watch the game's a bit strong, but there are a lot of people who hang out down there. Some watch the game, some just talk and, throw out some horrible pickup lines that I'm sure sometimes work. But the pen is another one. If you get there really early, when gates open, you can get along the railing of where the bullpen guys warm up and where they pitch, and you can watch an entire game from there. There's also the tower in right center field by the Dave Niehaus statue out there, where you can walk up a flight of stairs and you can lean on the railing, and you're not at the 300 level, so you're not way up there, but you're slightly above the 100 level. So I would try the pen. The best way to get to the pen, to make sure you get a good spot, or Edgar's or the railing by the bullpens, either where any of those spots, you probably want to get there early, which is right when gates open. Unfortunately, you want to go to the center field entrance, which is all the way around back towards where the train tracks are. That gate will open up 30 minutes before all the other gates. You want to go through there. You want to hang a right when you get through the gate, and that entire area, there's some restaurants, there's beer, and there's a little team shop right there. You'll see a big open patio. That is the pen, and that is where a lot of people hang out, and that's probably the shots you've seen that you're referring to. It's right there, right as you walk in from the center field gate. Don't go up the stairs from the center field gate. Hang a right, stay on the street level, and you'll find the open patio, or you'll find the railings where you can lean on to watch the game from, near the bullpen area. That's probably your best bet.
Another spot that you might be referring to is Trident Deck. And Trident Deck is always reserved for get-togethers, right? It's typically closed.
It's also a 300 level. Yeah.
It's also 300 level, and it's can you see the game from the Trident Deck?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, there's also the boardwalk, but that is also a 300 level. I'm sure you saw it. It's right behind home plate. That's a really cool area, just to kind of overlook the city and the water and all that stuff. But again, we're trying to avoid the 300 level. It sounds like you want to go to the pen or to Edgar's Cantina, where big groups of people congregate. Your best bet is to go in through the center field gate. It opens 2 hours before first pitch. The other gates open an hour and a half. And then you just want to stay on the street level. Don't go up the stairs. Just hang a right, and you should be able to get into the pen.
Now, Colby, I have to ask you. You're saying that I'm not a real fan, right? That I haven't been to the ballpark, etc. But do you have your name on a brick at T-Mobile Park?
Let me ask you this, Ty. Have you ever left a Mariners game early to miss one of the best comebacks in franchise history?
Yeah, because the last part of that is a little bit of a stretch.
I have never
one of the greatest
left a Mariners game early. Have you?
I have. I'll admit it.
Imagine that.
It wasn't because of the game.
Daddy bought a brick, so all of a sudden I'm a real Mariners fan, even though Colby, literally sticks around even when they're down 13-4 against the Yankees. But
I'm
Ty,
sorry,
we got dinner reservations. Can't watch them come back and beat Toronto because I got to get to this restaurant.
Colby, have you seen a playoff win in person?
I don't know, actually. I can't remember because I think I went to playoff games in 97 and 2001 and obviously this last year. So I might have been there for one.
Well, I've seen two, Colby. I've seen two.
Huh, that's cool. Did you see Cal Raleigh's clinching home run? Did you help Ichiro get inducted into the Team Hall of Fame?
I saw his home run off of Alek Manoah in game 1 of the wild card.
Cool. Were you there when we celebrated Edgar being inducted into the Hall of Fame? How about when we put Ichiro in the Team Hall of Fame? Will you be there when Ichiro gets inducted into the actual Hall of Fame?
I mean, Cooperstown is actually not that far from Toronto, so.
Or are you just there because they happen to be in your town? Because I travel out of my way to go be with the Mariners. For you, it's like a 30-minute bus ride. So
listen, man, if you want to send me some cash, like throw some cash my way, so I can make it out, I'm down.
Sorry, man. I'm spending my own cash on me.
I won't say no. I
spend my own cash on me. You spend your cash on you. So there you go.
All right, we're already at 31 minutes and we have 3 questions left.
It's your fault.
Lightning round. Wildcat Oblong asks, Lance Lynn looked very comfortable pitching in Seattle today. And he did. Should we take a shot at acquiring him? What do you think the cost would look like?
Was he really that good, though? Was he really?
It's like, how many whiffs did he end up with? He had like
32, I think.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, he had 25, I think, after 4 innings. So. 23. Yeah, if you think about it, after that, they only had 9. That's, But yeah, Lynn looked good. I don't think it was just because he liked the mound at T-Mobile, though.
No, it's exactly because of that. He liked the feel of the ballpark, the atmosphere.
Sure, if he's going to do that every time at T-Mobile Park, then you should trade Bryan Wu for him. Like, I mean, come on. Yeah, no, he's a guy that Ty and I have talked about. It's been a while since we talked about Lance Lynn, but the White Sox are a really obvious team. That they're going to sell, and they've already come out and said we're only interested in selling rentals, which is stupid.
Is kind of a rental,
right?
He's a year and a half guy, but I think they can be talked into it.
If they're really not willing to trade Lance Lynn, because he's got a year of club control left, they are the dumbest organization in baseball. And to be fair, they might already be anyways, but they're morons if they're not willing to trade Lance Lynn.
Rockies.
I mean, at least the Angels are winning right now. Rockies is a good one.
Did you just give the Angels a compliment?
They're like 8 games over 500. Yeah.
Gross.
So, yeah, well, we'll see how they blow it. It'll be fun to watch. Remember last year how they blew it? 17-game losing streak or something like that. So there's time. But yeah, I think you should be interested in Lynn. Either this summer or next winter when you're going to have to replace Robbie Ray for at least half the year. I think a guy like Lynn makes a lot of sense. He won't be too terribly expensive. There are going to be a lot of teams that are going to be scared away by his salary, which is, a pretty hefty price to pick up in the middle of the year. And unfortunately, I can't say the Mariners won't be one of them, but we'll see. Yeah, I think they should be interested in Lynn. I don't think it's going to cost a ton. I bet you could get Lynn for a package that's headlined by like Jonathan Clase. Maybe it costs you Emerson Hancock on the high end.
I'm very into the idea, especially if that's the cost.
Yeah,
I know he hasn't like yesterday was.
It was the outlier.
It was an outlier. He's been bad this year,
but he's never been as bad.
Yeah,
as he's been this year. So
yeah, I'm very much on the Lance Lynn train here. We'll probably do a trade a day about him at some point.
Probably.
Yeah, again, we don't have a lot of time to get into him right now, but we'll talk about him some more before the deadline approaches. All right, next question. CNC talks. How many more games does Wu have before he likely hits an innings cap? Also, is he a likely trade chip if we start to climb the standings? So we basically addressed this earlier on in the show. You said that you think that Wu has about 50 innings left, and that's probably on the high end.
Yeah, which is probably safe to say then 8 to 10 starts at most. Maybe you short script him once or twice. You get an extra start out of him. But yeah, I think it's probably 50 innings max and another 8 to 10 starts max. And then maybe they move him to the bullpen after that, or maybe because I don't think they're just going to shut him down. And I think if you get him to 100 innings and then he becomes a bullpen guy who pitches every like third day,
Sure.
then you could probably squeeze an extra 15 out of him because it'll be more broken up. But you're not just going to run Woo into the ground to keep him, pitching every 5 days. So yeah, I think I would say at most 10 more starts for Woo. It's probably closer to 8. And he could be traded, but I would classify that as unlikely. I don't think there's a guy out there that the Mariners are going to be willing to trade Bryan Woo for this summer.
Well, because now Woo's proving it. I mean, obviously, the numbers don't look great because of that one start against the Rangers, but Woo right now, and short, small sample size, but Woo right now has proven that he can do it at the major league level right now. And because of that, he's certainly one of the, 50 most valuable young assets there is right now in the game.
Probably 7. So basically 6 full years of a starting pitcher who's already shown mid-rotation stuff and isn't even fully done developing yet. Like, yeah, he'd be pretty valuable. So maybe, but like, I honestly think that for the Mariners to be interested in trading Woo right now, they'd have to be getting something like Jonathan India. And obviously that's not going to happen.
The Reds are winning too much right now.
Well, I mean, yeah, but even if they weren't, probably not going to happen. So I would say no, it's not likely, but it's not impossible.
All right, last question of the day from Ham Swaggerty 69. Everybody wants to talk about how we can improve this roster. And hey, I get it, but I feel like this is also a bench utilization issue. Why not see Pollock, Murphy, and Moore against righties a little bit more? I know you're trying to protect them, but Pollock and Murph in particular. Colby, you got any thoughts on this?
Yeah, you're not wrong. I think AJ Pollock needs to play a little bit more because you have to know, right? Because if Pollock is not going to hit, right, that's just not going to happen this year, then you have to go out and you have to get an AJ Pollock because the idea behind Pollock makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
And he's managed to help you. He's hit a few big home runs. He's managed to play pretty good defense. He's a good base runner. So why not give Pollock 10 days, as much as his body can handle, where he's in the lineup every day, DH, right field, left, doesn't matter, right? Just get him in the lineup every day and see what he's going to do, because the odds that he helps you more than Mike Ford, pretty significant. The odds that he can do that when he's only playing once every 4 days, pretty much zero. So yeah, I think you do need to give Pollock, more at bats. I'm actually okay with the usage of Murphy. I'm fine with that. He should pretty much only be hitting against lefties, occasional righty. Sure, if the matchup is good, but if it's a righty with like a good breaking ball, which is a lot of righties, it's probably not the best matchup for Murphy. And then with Dylan Moore, it's really just about what can his body handle right now, because last night, right, or yesterday, during yesterday's game, Colton Wong bunt single, gets on first. You don't pinch run Dylan Moore. You don't use Dylan Moore as a defensive replacement, or Caballero for that matter. But like, it seems to me like if Moore's not in the starting lineup, he's not available for that day. So, which means they're really trying to ease him in. So I don't know how much more you could put on Dylan Moore physically. So that one I'm unsure of. I think they should use Pollock more. I think you need to give him what they never gave Tommy La Stella and what they barely gave Colton Wong after middle of May. You need to give him a legitimate stretch of at bats to see if there's something here that he can do to help you more. Because if not, that's a position you might actually have to go out and fix. Thankfully, like the second base problem, you've kind of managed that with Caballero continually getting hit by pitches and walking. So you don't have a black hole at second base, but Pollock's role is an important role. It's one you want to have filled with a good player. So you need to know if that is Pollock or if you need to go out and get somebody else. So I do think you need to play Pollock. I would like to see Pollock get 4 starts on this upcoming road trip. My guess is he gets 1 or 2, which I think is a waste, but
I'm kind of curious to see if Dylan Moore is actually long for the 2023 roster. Does have 3 minor league options left, and look, you miss all of your off-season activities, you miss all of spring training, you get kind of rushed into your first rehab stint, you suffer a setback, then you make the next, rehab stint, and now you're back in the big leagues after, only a handful of games, really. There's a lot of action and conditioning Dylan Moore has missed over the last 6 months, 7 months.
Yeah, he looks like a guy who hasn't participated in baseball activities for the last 8 months.
Yeah. Pollock, on the other hand, he had a really good month of May, 222, 326, 417. That's a 111 WRC plus.
Mm-hmm.
He's played 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 games in the month of June, negative 12 WRC plus during that time. I don't know. It's weird. It's really weird assessing him because there's, again, like he's gone on a stretch where he's looked pretty good. Like he's looked like the guy that you basically signed him to be. And then there's this other version of AJ Pollock that we've seen that's been utterly unusable. I wonder if that's maybe just a lack of consistency in his game reps and plate appearances, or if he might actually just be washed. The real concern is still the splits against lefties. He hasn't been good against lefties, which is what you brought him in to do.
Right.
And that's another one of those inexplicable things, like Colton Wong, like Jesse Winker, like where it's just, all right, yeah, maybe you would suffer some regression on that front, but to this degree, like, what the hell is going on there? So I don't know. This team is probably going to need a bench shakeup at some point, especially if they are going to compete. And I don't know if they are competing this year for the postseason and potentially more. If Dylan Moore is a part of it, if AJ Pollock's a part of it, Colton Wong's certainly not a part of it. So this bench is probably going to look a little bit different in 3 or 4 weeks time.
Which is fine as long as you go get the everyday bat too.
Yeah. Don't just supplement with the Jake Lambs and the Kirk Casallis of the world.
No, you need the everyday bat.
Yeah.
If you do that, then go get the Jake Lambs and blah, blah, blah. But get the big guy.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for submitting your questions. We really appreciate it. Hashtag JP for ASG. Send us your all-star game ballots. You guys have been great with that via email and on Twitter at LO_Mariners or lockedonmariners@gmail.com. Send us a screenshot of your ballot voting JP Crawford into the all-star game, and you enter for a chance to win Colby's signed Luis Castillo card. It's a beautiful card. You definitely want to get in on that. All you have to do is vote for JP Crawford and show us proof of that. All right, that's going to do it for our show. Again, you can catch the Mariners and the Yankees on the Mariners hometown broadcast with SiriusXM via the SXM app starting tomorrow. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Locked On Mariners podcast. For Colby Patnode, I'm Trident Gonzalez. Be sure to give us a follow on Twitter at LO_Mariners. You can follow me at Dane Gonzalez. It's DANEGNZLZ. And Colby at CPAT11. That's CPAT11. Follow us on Instagram and TikTok as well over at Locked On Mariners. That's one word, Locked On Mariners. You can also find all that stuff in the description of this episode. Thank you again for making us your first listen. Have yourself a beautiful baseball day, and we'll see you tomorrow. Peace.